Well, good morning. This is Barry Odell with the Church of Christ at Mammoth Spring Facebook page. Hope everybody's doing well today. Got folks joining on. Good morning, everybody. Glad you're here. And if you have any questions or comments throughout this video today, please add it in the comment section here, and I'll address it as I see it. Going back to something a little different today. I'm not starting a series or anything, but this is a viewer-requested topic to talk about or to discuss the matter of heaven and hell. Eternity is what we're going to talk about today. And so I've got a PowerPoint up here, and I haven't done that in a while. Got to get used to the feel of it again. So be patient with me. But again, if you do have any questions or comments as we go throughout this video, let's have it, and we'll deal with it when we get there. All right, let's talk about heaven and hell. Let's talk about an eternal reward or eternal punishment. I have my own way of studying, and I know everybody does. But when I think about a topic, or I'm asked about a topic, or I'm going to address something in a sermon, the first thing I do is I get out my concordance and I look up all the terms that are used, where they are used, how they are used, and things like this. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to break it up essentially into a couple of different parts. We're going to talk about hell. We're going to talk about it in the Old Testament. We're going to talk about it in the New Testament. Then we're going to talk about heaven. Then we're going to talk about resurrection and the two sides of eternity. So that's the plan for today, and hope you can get something out of this. And if you do, again, have any questions or comments, please use the comment section. So we're going to start in the Old Testament and how it uses the word hell. It's an interesting study, especially if you are used to using different versions of the Bible. The word that is translated hell, every time the word hell appears in the Old Testament, it is from the Hebrew word Sheol, or Sheol, as we would pronounce it, and it has a variety of uses. It's interesting to note the different passages in which it is used. Just for instance, when Jacob was told by his children that Joseph was dead, he said, "I'm going to go down to the grave in sorrow." Well, the word there is Sheol, so sometimes it is used in that sense. It's used in reference to the place where a dead body is put, the grave. Here's another example of it from 2 Samuel chapter 22. Well, I'm in the wrong chapter. 2 Samuel chapter 22 and verses 5 and 6. This is David writing. He says, when the waves of death surrounded me, the flood of ungodliness made me afraid. The sorrows of," the New King James says, Sheol, "surrounded me. The snares of death confronted me." So again, whatever he was writing about specifically, he is talking about the troubles that he experienced in life, and some of those troubles brought him near to death. So that's how that word is also used in the Old Testament. In Numbers chapter 16, when there was a rebellion against Moses' leadership, Korah and Dathan, you can read the specifics in the early part of Numbers chapter 16, their punishment, the Bible describes it in an interesting way as something new that's going to happen, and that is that they would be swallowed up by the earth and that they would go down into a pit. Well, the word there that is used as a pit is the word Sheol. So again, that would be the place where their bodies would go for their punishment in rebellion against Moses and his leadership. But then this word Sheol is also used in Jonah chapter 2 and verse 2. Jonah is poetically writing about his experience in the belly of the great fish, and he talks about going down into a great pit. Well, same word. Well, where was he for those 3 days? He was in the belly of a whale. He was in a very deep place. Belly of a whale. Belly of a great fish. And so that's the word that is used there. So my point is this. Every time you see that word hell in the Old Testament, in the King James Version of the Bible, it's that word Sheol, and it has different meanings. Context will always tell you the meaning. And that's the case with most words, by the way. Now let's think about the idea of hell in the New Testament. In the King James Version, there are 3 words that are translated as hell. And I think this is one of the areas where the King James Version, and I know it's a favorite of a lot of people, I have nothing against it, but it does have its shortfalls. And that's the case with any version of the Bible you're going to use. There is no such thing as a literal word-for-word translation of the Bible. There are accurate translations, there are reliable translations, there are inaccurate and unreliable translations. The King James falls short here. they use this word hell throughout the New Testament, but it actually comes from 3 different Greek words, and it's important to understand this. This is one reason that I like the New King James Version, because it makes distinctions like this. And again, it's nothing against the King James Version. The English language at that time, in the 17th century, was not as broad, I guess that would be a good word to use, as broad as it is today. So they had this word hell. 12 times in your King James Version of the Bible, the word hell is translated from the Greek word Gehenna. And I'm going to show you just a couple of these examples here. 12 times. Now, this is interesting. This word is only used by Jesus and James. Jesus uses it 11 times. James uses it only once. Now, listen to how Jesus uses it. Matthew chapter 5 and verse 22. But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whoever says to his brother, Raca, shall be in danger of the council. But whoever says, you fool, shall be in danger of hell fire. So it's connected with fire in some sense. You go down to verses 29 and 30 of Matthew chapter 5. Let's see. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you. For it would be more profitable for you that one of your members should perish than your whole body to be cast into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you. For it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. Okay, so there's that word, hell. James talks about the tongue being set on fire by hell. It is a place that burns. It's a place of fire. Now, if you know your Old Testament, you know that this word Gehenna actually has an Old Testament connection. There was an area outside of the city of Jerusalem called the Valley of Hinnom, Hinnom, the Valley of Hinnom. It was used for a couple of different things. It was basically the city dump, and it burned all the time. They threw their trash out there, they burned it. Sometimes dead bodies were thrown out there, and they were burned. For a period of time in their history, they would go there and offer their children in the fire. So it has an interesting origin in the Old Testament. You come over into the New Testament, and we're told about this place of fire. It's better to lose one of your body parts than for your whole body to remain intact physically and then be cast into a place of fire that's called hell. So 12 times that word is used in the pages of your New Testament, 11 times by Jesus and 1 time by James. Another instance where Jesus uses this word Gehenna is in Matthew chapter 10 and verse 20. Let me see here. Verse 28. Jesus tells his disciples, and do not fear those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. So there it is again. A second word that's used in the original language that's translated as hell in the King James Version is this word Hades. It's only used 10 times in your Bible, 10 times in your New Testament. And this word means the unseen. That's all it means. Just for instance, Matthew chapter 16 and verse 18, Jesus says the gates of hell would not prevent him from establishing his church. And of course, King James uses the word hell. New King James uses the word Hades. His death, the death of Jesus on the cross, would not stop the church from being established, is what he was saying there. Now, I've got Luke chapter 16 and verse 23, another passage where this word is used. Let me get over there real quick. Luke 16 and verse 23. And being in torments in Hades, he lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham afar off. In torments. He was being punished in the unseen realm, the rich man was, in the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. Acts chapter 2 is another place where this word is used. And like I said, this is how I do my Bible studies when I'm asked about a specific topic, so that's why we're doing it this way, looking at several different verses. Acts chapter 2 and verse 27, you will not leave my soul in Hades, nor will you allow your Holy One to see corruption. That's a quote of Psalm chapter 16. And it's talking about the resurrection of Jesus. Jesus' body did not see corruption. He didn't see corruption when he was dead. He was raised before then. Again, Psalm 16, that's around verses 10 and 11. It's referenced here in Acts chapter 2 and verse 27. And also, I think it's also in verse 31. Yeah, verse 31. And direct connection with the resurrection. But then also it's used throughout the book of Revelation. Revelation chapter 6, the pale horse was followed by death and Hades. All right. We all die. We all go to Hades, the unseen realm. And then a third word that's used, I'll put up here on the screen for you, is, and this is only used one time in your New Testament, and it's over in 2 Peter chapter 2. And I'll just read it to you, read the verse to you. This chapter, all of 2 Peter chapter 2, is addressing false teachers and what their character is, what their method is, and ultimately what their destiny is in eternity. So 2 Peter 2 and verse 4 says, "For if God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them down to hell." There's our word, hell. The only time this word is used in the New Testament, in the Bible in general. And it's a word actually that that Peter borrowed from Greek mythology. He didn't adopt Greek mythology here. He just used a term that people were familiar with. And Tartarus, or Tartarao, as this word is here in the Greek language, in Greek mythology was a place of punishment reserved for lesser deities. Okay, in other words, like the children of the higher gods in Greek mythology. It was not the place to go. Well, Peter says that false teachers, angels who fell, are destined for this place. They are reserved for judgment. Well, what does it mean to be reserved? Well, something is held in place until judgment. That's the word hell there in 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 4. So you've got hell in the Old Testament, you've got hell in the New Testament. And understanding those words is important. Let's think for a minute then about the resurrection. Okay, this is an important topic to understand. I'm going to go ahead and put all the passages up there that I've got. There are obviously a lot more that deal with this subject, but there are three in particular that I want us to look at to think about the resurrection. First one, I'm going to go to Mark chapter 12, and this is actually, this event here, this discussion is recorded by Matthew, Mark, and Luke, but I like the way Mark words it. I think it helps us have a little clearer understanding of what just exactly we're talking about in terms of a resurrection. Some people struggle with this concept. So the Sadducees come to Jesus with this concept of, the Bible tells us, first of all, that they don't believe in resurrection. But then they come to him with a question about it, which shows their motive. They don't, they're not interested in learning the truth. Very dishonest people. They said, well, there's this woman. She marries a guy. They don't have any children, and he dies. Then she marries his brother. They don't have any children. He dies. And this happens 7 times. They're asking a question in connection with the law of Moses and inheritance and things like this and marriage. But they try to apply it to the resurrection. Now, Jesus, here's his answer. Mark 12, beginning in verse 24. "Are you not therefore mistaken, because you do not know the Scriptures nor the power of God? For when they rise from the dead..." Well, who's the they? It's the woman and the 7 brothers that they've just asked about. "When they rise from the dead, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like the angels in heaven. But concerning the dead, that they rise. Have you not read in the book of Moses, in the burning bush passage, how God spoke to him, saying, 'I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob'? He is not the God of the dead, but the God of the living. You are therefore greatly mistaken." He tells them there is going to be a resurrection. And he quotes the burning bush passage, Exodus chapter 3. So the Old Testament even touches on not as in great detail as the New Testament does, but it talks about an afterlife. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were dead in the days of Moses. But God said to Moses, "I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." He didn't say, "I used to be," or "I was." Jesus tells us that there is going to be a resurrection. All right, and then we turn over to John chapter 5 and verses 28 and 29, and there are several verses around just these two that we could read, but for sake of time, we're not. John 5 and verse 28, "Do not marvel at this." Marvel. Don't let this surprise you. "Do not marvel at this, for the hour is coming in which all who," both of those terms are plural. There's coming a time when all who are in the graves will hear his voice and come forth. That's a resurrection. They're in the graves. They're going to come forth. those who have done good to the resurrection of life, and those who have done evil to the resurrection of condemnation. So you have the idea is there, what I would say, maybe there's a better way of phrasing it, but two sides of the resurrection of life and a resurrection of condemnation. All right, then the third passage I've got here is Acts chapter 24, verses 14 and 15, and this is when Paul is giving a defense for his work in preaching the gospel. Acts 24, verse 14. But this I confess to you, that according to the way which they call a sect, he's talking about the church, that's why he's being persecuted, so I worship the God of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. I have hope in God, which they themselves also accept, that there will be a resurrection of the dead, both of the just and the unjust. So Paul employs the exact same language here in Acts 24 that Jesus used in John chapter 5 and that Jesus used in Mark chapter 12. There will be a resurrection, Mark 12. There will be a resurrection both of the just and the unjust, John 5, Acts chapter 24. It's not happened yet. There are still a lot of people in the grave. His voice has not been heard yet. I mean, there are a lot of things that have not taken place. There is a resurrection that's going to come. So let's finish the video on this slide here. Let's talk about the sides, if you will, of eternity. Again, I'm sure there's a better way to put it, but that's my wording. I'm going to start in Matthew chapter 25 because we have, obviously, here the teachings of Jesus, and this is the context of a day of judgment that's going to come that no one knows about. There are not going to be any indicators. He tells his audience, Matthew 25 and verse 13, "Watch, therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour in which the Son of Man is coming." You have to be prepared at all times because he's coming as other writers of the New Testament tell us, he's coming as a thief in the night. So look at Matthew 25 and verse 41. He's going to say to those on the left hand, "Depart from me, you cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels." This broader context begins up in verse 31, where we have Jesus coming, sitting on his throne, and all nations are gathered before him. There's going to be a separation between the right and the left, between the sheep and the goats. Those on the left are going to be told to depart, go away into everlasting fire. Then you get down to verse 46, "These will go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into eternal life." So again, you have this concept, and really it's connected with what we were just talking about, the resurrection of the just and the unjust. Now you have the picture of everybody standing before God, rather Christ. John 5:22 tells us that all judgment's been committed to the Son. Anyway, and there's a separation. And I think that's actually a more accurate way to talk about the last day. Instead of talking about it as the day of judgment, it's really the day of separation. Our judgment is determined here and now by the decisions we make, whether we follow God or not. On that last day, when he comes as a thief in the night, it's just going to be saying, all right, you're here and you're here. Everlasting fire and punishment or everlasting life. That's two sides of eternity. I love this passage here, in this context of helping us understand that there are, in fact, two sides of eternity. So I'm going to Romans chapter 2, where Paul is writing to, obviously, the church at Rome. And beginning in verse 5, he says, "But in accordance with your hardness and your impenitent heart, you are treasuring up for yourself wrath in the day of wrath and revelation of the righteous judgment of God." Again, judgment is coming. What's God going to do on that day? Verse 6, "Who will render to each one according to his deeds, eternal life, who to those by patient continuance in doing good seek for glory, honor, and immortality." So there's one side, glory, honor, immortality. "But to those who are self-seeking and do not obey the truth, but obey unrighteousness, indignation and wrath, tribulation and anguish on every soul of man who does evil, on the Jew first and also of the Greek. But glory, honor, and peace to everyone who works what is good, to the Jew first and also to the Greek." And then he makes this statement, "For there is no partiality with God." God doesn't show any favoritism. He's going to judge every man, as he says back up there in verse 5. He's going to render to each one according to his works. That's how God judges. Not with favoritism, not with partiality. There are two sides of eternity. There are two sides of the resurrection. There are two sides on the last day, the day that's coming that no man knows of. Notice that. There's two in each of those things. And then finally, this will be the last passage, Revelation chapter 22, verses 14 and 15. Of course, all of Revelation is this imagery, these word pictures of the battle between good and evil. This is the battle between the dragon and the lamb. And the victory ultimately, of course, we know goes to the lamb. They overcome him by the blood and things like this. Revelation 22:14. Blessed are those who do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life and may enter through the gates into the city. And we know, of course, that city is, Hebrews 11 talks about it as a heavenly city or a heavenly country. It's a city that's prepared. The only people that will be in that city are those who do his commandments, as opposed to Revelation 22:15, those who are outside the city. Dogs, sorcerers, fornicators, murderers, idolaters, and whoever loves and practices a lie. Two sides of eternity. You've got two sides on the final day that's coming as a thief in the night, the right and the left. You've got two sides of the resurrection of the just and the resurrection of the unjust. From everybody who's in the grave is going to be raised, and there's going to be a separation. So what does the Bible teach us about heaven and hell? Think about it this way, and then I'll wrap it up. If you believe in heaven, and it's interesting when you look at these polls that are taken sometimes, and there are polls that are taken on a regular basis among secular groups, but also among religious groups. Polls about heaven and hell are always interesting to me because more people believe in heaven than believe in hell. And I guess part of the justification of that is, well, if you believe in God and he loves people and, sent his son and doesn't want people to die, then he won't send people to hell. Therefore, I don't believe in hell. That's the way a lot of people frame it. But think about it like this. If you believe in eternity, if you believe in eternal reward, you have to believe in eternal punishment. Because all these passages we looked at today, whether we're talking about Revelation, Romans, Matthew, John 5, Acts 24, and so many others, each one of those passages talks about a place of eternal punishment, but also a place of eternal reward. So if you believe in one, you have to believe in the other. One logically follows the other. If you believe in heaven, you have to believe in hell, because the Bible speaks of them in the same terms. All right, two sides of eternity. Let me look through the comments here, just a bunch of greetings. Again, I'm glad to see everybody here today. Hope you're doing well today and have a good week this week. Mark says, judgment is rendered when the soul is placed in Hades, that is, paradise or torment. Yeah, there are two sides to Hades. Hades, again, is the unseen. And, that's the value for us of Luke chapter 16, because it shows us both sides. It shows one man in comfort. It shows one man in torment. And both waiting as Peter uses that terminology, the reserve for judgment, 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 4. Let me see, I got a text here. Sometimes I get text about... No, that's about something else. All right, so that's what I've got today. I appreciate you guys being on here today. Again, if you have any questions or comments, even after the stream is over, you can access our comment section. Like and share our videos on Facebook, if you would. If you have somebody who doesn't do Facebook, send them to our YouTube channel, Mammoth Spring Church of Christ, and they can access all this content there. I'm going to come back tomorrow. The plan is at 11 o'clock, and we're going to study a question that I got sent about church. And really the lesson has to do, will have to do more with using accurate language when we talk about Bible things. So come back tomorrow at 11 o'clock, and that's what we'll talk about. Thanks for being here today. Have a good day, and I hope to get to see you on here tomorrow.